Hello, everyone. It is summer, end of summer here in this 2025. I feel the need to sit down. We're currently in the midst of the serial rapist, head of, self-appointed czar of health, and lesser son of a known eugenicist family, RFK Jr., trying to outlaw vaccines. And the popular demand for this among, fash folk is something that the rest of us have a hard time understanding in general. So I'm going to try to explain it because, I come from the rural South. I saw how all this developed. I got an early look at it. And forgive me for the Wednesday Addams sort of vibe, if it not having my whole head in frame. But just FYI, that's one good way to watch out for fascist eugenicist governments who might be using facial recognition software to try to, because I have, acquaintances that show up to anti-treason, pro-constitution sort of protests. And if there's so much as a picture of them, because they're veterans, you see, and the government has their biometrics, they get identified, and So, and of course, we know how this regime treats veterans, and they want to claim they're patriotic, but they shit on the people that serve this country in uniform, and are purging tens of thousands of them and trying to strip them of all their benefits as well. A little Ponce who builds a makeup studio in the Pentagon like Hegseth. But anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about right now. I'm here to talk about why are they trying to outlaw vaccines? Why do they hate vaccines and medicines and science so much? Is it just about them never liking to be told they're wrong? Is it just about them being infantile and never wanting to be told to do anything? Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, remember Lauren Boebert calling the COVID shot the Fauci ouchie? A lot of them are children. They're childlike. But that's not... this cuts deeper, and it is kind of important to understand. So the reason that they don't like vaccines, medicines, they like... And RFK Jr. reminds us of this every day. They like to believe that everything is within their power or God's. And that one is an extension of the other. They're an extension of God's will on this earth. They have everything right. Whatever they believe is true, or they will act to make it true. And so the only explanation in there, it's medieval worldview essentially, where and there's a secular version of it, because remember, this is a coalition of medieval Dark Ages theocrats with Nazis, but then also they're supposedly the horses that are hitched to this wagon with the bro-oligarchy, right? That's what we're dealing with here, the bro-oligarchy. A million rich fools before them thinks, I know how to steer these cretins. No, you don't. No disrespect to people who I'm sorry. I have a classical education, so I learned a lot of racialized language as pejorative terms. Through the Hellenic influence. My apologies to the good people of Crete. I would never compare them to these likes. But they have to believe that if something is wrong with someone's health, it's something they deserve for some reason. Because obviously, they're God's favorite people, and God will never let anything bad happen to them unless there's some malign, evil, conspiratorial human influence of it that's causing it. That's why it was so important for them to believe a lab-born theory about the COVID, any virus, for them to believe, it must be man-made, it must be some plot. It can't be of nature, because that means it's of God, and God would never allow anything bad to happen to me. I'm God's special favoritist boy, and God will give me only good things. So that's where it comes from. And I failed because I did a recording towards the beginning of the year where I said I was going to try to explain the decline of American Christianity and how it seems to me it unfolded over 4 or 5 generations. And I talked about my grandparents' generation. And then I stopped. I stopped because I was going to go sequentially, but that, of course, would bring me next to my parents' generation, the baby boomers. And that is going to be a really long, hard, difficult conversation for me. So I'm just going to skip around it and proceed to my generation in this process, what we call the premillennial generation, right? Like Generation X and early Generation Y. And so I was giving an example, and I can have an example I can use because basically no one from this family is that I knew is around anymore, other than one person who is, a huge red hat who's not going to be. Yeah. Anyway, point being, there's a lot I could reflect on, but this family I talked about that. The grandfather, from my point of view, the guy who was my grandfather's age, that had helped teach me to drive, and how they had been so good to me after I lost my dad, and they had known him since childhood, and so that's why they were family friends. And I talked about how their faith was a very somber, dutiful one. They were the Depression generation, the World War II generation. And that their faith came with a strong sense of duty, and it could be very cold and austere and not offer a lot of love and validation. And that they were, because of what they had lived through, they tended to be very emotionally distant people. And of course, their children, the baby boomers, had to live with that, and had to live with a lot of, either soft or hard and emotional neglect, no doubt. And so without stopping there for too long, point being is that's how you get situations where, say, their parents always expect the utmost, and so they never teach about, well, okay, yes, you shouldn't have sex before marriage, but if you do, how should you do it safely, and etc. And so because of that, their daughters get pregnant, and then there's recrimination about what choices are made there. And so that's how you get the situation where, for those daughters or for the guys that got them pregnant, like they see the faith of their parents not speaking to the reality of their life. There's a fundamental divergence, and they're not, they see the word love in the New Testament, but they're not feeling a lot of it. And so they spin off and they go to they leave the Methodist or Episcopalian or Presbyterian churches of their parents, and they go to these, radical, Southern Baptist or other churches. Now, I'm not just trying to boil it down to one denomination, but they go somewhere where it's an emotive, expressive kind of faith, and very emotion driven, and they learn, frankly, solipsism, a lot of them. But this brings me around. So basically, this scenario unfolds. Now, I watched the scenario unfold over 2 generations in the same family. And so now we get to a child who is my age, roundabout. Someone that I grew up with, and was always a very sweet kid, and someone that I care for and wish well. But it wasn't a surprise to me when I found out that despite being in the private preppy Christian school, because her mother had decided, public school was godless and miscegenated, not a good place for her. They thought nothing could happen to her here in this Christian academy. Of course it did, and that didn't come as a surprise. Well, now she's one of these extreme anti-vaccine people because she had a child who has autism. And so what? To you or me? Oh, by the way, this is what kids can do. She basically stole her grandmother's house. Basically, her grandfather had passed. Her grandmother offered her a place to live while she was pregnant. She didn't leave afterwards. Then she invited the baby daddy and his whole family to move in and basically take over the house and terrorize this woman until she left and went to stay with friends. So she basically stole her grandmama's house. And last I saw her before she blocked me was, would smear constant filth about her how awful her grandparents were. When it's like, really, they gave you everything. They were cruel and judgmental, but at the end of the day, like, they also gave you shelter and sanctuary and support whenever you needed it. And they didn't meet your emotional needs, but everything else that's how that generation was. The great generation, like, that's how they were. And so I'm not saying they were perfect, but yeah, just terrorize her grandmother, steal her house, and then she's gone, she's out of the picture. And these same people now want to act so righteous and godly, of course. I had a long conversation with her, trying to talk sense to her about vaccines and medicine. And she went, if you've ever seen like the Better Call Saul, the brother on Better Call Saul with the electricity thing. Meanwhile, she was going further downhill where she was throwing out all the cookware from the house and convinced that there's like contaminants in every surface. And I'm not saying like there isn't in some of it. Right, but like she was literally like destroying the house that she stole because she's convinced, throwing out everything because she's convinced like some environmental contagion, some man-made thing is the only reason I would be cursed or punished with this non-normative child. Because that's what it is to them in all their narcissism and all their entitlement and vanity. That's what it is to them. If they have a kid that's queer, if they have a kid that's disabled, if they have a kid that's autistic, or whatever, like different in any way, they think this can't be real unless it's a man-made act. It can't be an act of God. It can't be natural because that in their mind equates to an act of God. So they say, but I'm perfect. I espouse the right religion. I didn't get an abortion. Therefore, I should be given a normal child. That's how they think of it. They think it's all for them. This world is only to serve them and placate them. And they're the center of the universe, and everything else is supposed to pander to them. God on high is supposed to pander to them. And they really think like, oh no, it must be something. We'll just outlaw vaccines. Who cares how many people it kills? Because there must be something that made my kid this way that I don't like. And yet I'm not allowed to take him back to the kids' store and get a refund. Like, they feel cheated. They feel cheated. That's how it is. It's a medieval Dark Ages mentality, but combined with a thoroughly modern form of narcissism and vanity and entitlement and gluttony. That just like treating their own children like some product that they're not satisfied with. And they will not lose a wink of sleep over the amount of suffering they inflict on all the rest of you and your families and your kids. And that tirade and that tantrum and that seeking of vengeance against others. That like, the family down the street that does believe in science and their kids are, as it happens, none of them are like autistic or disabled or anything. It's like, that makes them angry. Do you understand? To see other people happy makes them angry. Because they think, oh, those people down the street, they're godless. They don't go to church. Why should they have a better life than mine? That's supposed to be mine. The entitlement is boundless. The vanity is boundless. And so the reason that they don't want vaccination or medicine is, yes, paranoia, but also this sense of desert that like, and really think about what it is like to be one of those kids that they view with such disdain and contempt, and that they think, oh, well, this kid is atypical in some way, and so therefore they're not what I like. I think kids don't pick up on that. But then, if that kid does pick up on that and become resentful, understandably, what will those parents say? They'll say, oh, it was the woke libtards on the internet that beamed the Hugo Chavez ghost waves from the satellites and turned my children against me. That's what they'll say. It'll be the same thing over again. Anyway, that's what's up with that.